Okay, good evening, everyone. This is John Haller with our next prophecy roundtable on technocracy, transhumanism, AI, and all those things related to technology and how we see this playing into the mark of the beast system. If somebody would just give me a thumbs up in the comments to let me know that we're live and everybody's hearing us. So tonight I'm joined by Britt Gillette, End Times Bible Prophecy, Scott Townsend, I Am a Watchman, and Patrick Wood from Technocracy.news. And we may or may not be joined by Pete Garcia later in this program. So tonight we're going to try to talk about a number of issues. Believe me, as we sort of talk through the things that we see happening in this space related to Bible prophecy, they're pretty dramatic. I'm just going to read, though, from Revelation chapter 13 to kind of set the context where we think a lot of this is going, and then we'll go into some different topics. We may also have some time for some questions. If you would get those, the moderators will curate those for us, and they will get those to us. We can't guarantee that we will get to all of them or any of them. And we're going to try to keep this to a reasonable length tonight. And somebody will say, what does John Haller mean by reasonable length? And I'll say that's open for discussion. But anyway, so Revelation chapter 13 has some information that relates to the subjects that we'll talk about tonight. Starting in verse 11, it says, "Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he was speaking as a dragon. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and he makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast whose fatal wound was healed. And he does great signs so that he even makes fire come down out of heaven to the earth in the presence of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which were given to him to do in the presence of the beast, telling those who dwell on earth to make an image to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. And it was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast would even speak and cause as many as do not worship the beast to be killed. And he causes all, the small and great, and the rich and the poor, and the free men and the slaves, that they will be given a mark on their right hand or their forehead, so that no one will be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of man, and his number is 666. So those of us who've been around the Bible prophecy community for a while know that how this verse may come about has led to a lot of speculation over the last 50 or 60 years, from barcodes to credit cards to social security numbers and that type of thing. And I think now we're sort of we may have reached a tipping point. And my talks lately, I've been talking about a threshold, that there's like a bar, and we're getting closer and closer to the bar on a number of issues in Bible prophecy. I don't know that we're at the point where we can get up in front of people and say with certainty, this is that which was prophesied. I find those people who make those proclamations to be somewhat problematic, just because the landscape of everything is changing. And I just kind of like to maybe survey the guys that are here tonight. We'll start with Britt, and we'll go to Scott and then Patrick. Where do you think we are on crossing this threshold, particularly with what we read in Revelation 13 and other passages that are related?
Well, I think we're right on the cusp of seeing all of this. Again, the mark of the beast requires the Antichrist, the false prophet, the tribulation. We're not in that time period right now. But we're seeing the construction of the foundation of that system right before our eyes. And various digital systems, from central bank digital currencies, stable coins, tokenized assets, digital IDs, and just a surveillance society all over the globe. I mean, all of these things combined together with AI analyzing all these different data points, we can see how, for the first time in the history of Christianity, how Revelation 13 can be fulfilled outside of the supernatural. How it can be, everyone on earth can have their buy-sell transactions controlled. And that's significant. We should take note of that and notice that what we're seeing being built right in front of us, while it may not be the mark of the beast system yet, it's indistinguishable in capability and function from what we read in Revelation 13. So there won't be a need to build this system during the tribulation. It'll already exist. It's just sort of like flipping a light switch and implementing the mark on the right hand or on the forehead. So that's where I think we stand. How long it takes for all of this to play out exactly, I have no idea. But all I know is what we can observe, and what we observe should make everyone who reads the Bible stand up and take notice.
Okay. Scott.
So that's really well said. I agree with that. I'll add something that's a little bit different. What's weighing on me right now is the amount of evil that we're seeing. What comes to mind recently is a open air, like some kind of an outdoor parade that was done in France. I think it was done in Toulouse, with full blown, satanic themes involving a key character called Lilith, which is a false representation of Eve in the garden. And tens of thousands of people were caught up in watching the spectacle of this evil, including what looked like pentagram type, signage and things like that, as well as a bunch of kids in the presence. I don't know what's going on over in France right now. When you add Macron's appetite for being the god of Mars, lowercase g, and his, out of control thinking almost, is just so strange to me that what it shows me is that the technical side of what we see, and Britt is correct. I mean, we've all talked in the past roundtables about the fact that these systems are in place and are coming up. I don't think the integration effort to do this, to unite all the central currencies, is a big deal. I personally believe, as a systems architect type guy, that the wiring, the potential for this is a non-starter. It's just going to be done. It's not like you have to go through a major integration effort to unite the currencies, probably through the BI, what's that called, that organization, Britt?
BIS, the Bank of International Settlements.
Thank you. Bank of International Settlement. I think it's all architected that way. So I look at that stuff, and all that stuff is there. But what I'm noticing recently in the last month since our last roundtable has been the people's appetite for evil and their willingness to cooperate with deception without critical thinking and challenging anything, including the church, I would add. So when you consider that, you consider 2 Timothy 3, and you consider these major verses, yeah, I think we are right there. I think the conditions are there. I'm waiting for a new type of pharmakia to come out. I'm waiting for that announcement that some new drug is coming out that will be way beyond what we see today. It will be a designer thing sometime, and maybe that's what explains all the language in Revelation about pharmakia. And so, yes, we're looking at these final little pieces, but I think if I were to estimate, 90% of it is here now. I don't know what you think, Patrick. I'll turn it over to you.
You're
muted.
That's my problem. Thank you very much.
There you go. Yeah.
I want to say first, we're not in this time yet, the tribulation. This should not be anything fearful for Christians alive today. However, we're watching and waiting to see what's going to happen. If somebody is listening to this video during the tribulation, even a Christian perhaps, the first thing I'd say, the mark of the beast involves worship. It's very clear that it says, whoever will worship him, that's the devil. The devil is seeking worshipers. Like Scott says, they're all already, attracting to evil and the devil right now. But this will be endemic during the tribulation period. Those who are willing to worship the devil are going to receive the mark. That's simple. But if you don't, or you're not willing to worship the devil, then you're going to be killed. That's this simple proposition. You can, or you will, or you will not. So there's no threat to you post tribulation or post rapture Christian. There's no threat to you to be subject to being deceived into taking this mark, because if you do not worship the devil at that point, the Antichrist, you're safe. You won't get the mark. That's first thing that comes to my mind. The second thing that comes to my mind, what's going on today, there's definitely an apostasy, a massive apostasy going on in the church today. Formerly, we saw multitudes of worshipers in church, evangelicals, heads screwed on right, just doing their thing week to week. Now we see that a mass exodus of at least some of these people into things are just flat out heretical. I'm not going to go into all this stuff at this point, but suffices to say, whatever we've been sold as a bill of goods, that there's going to be a massive revival today before Christ returns. I think that's just wishful thinking at this point. I see that the church is going the other way right now. This is why we need to rescue as many people as you can. Warn them, don't go that way. However, here's the hope. After the rapture, when God takes over the evangelization of the world, that's going to be another issue. You're going to see millions upon millions of people coming to Christ after the rapture. We see them in heaven. The multitude, like the grains of the sand on the beach, that's going to be an amazing, amazing thing. But we see God is able to do things that we can't do as the church, even though we're commanded to do that. When God takes over that role, it's going to be a thing to behold, I think. So there's hope, even for the church. We won't call those people the church, but nevertheless, they're going to be believers on the same grounds that we are believers today. It's based on grace and faith alone.
I have an interesting question, because that's a very interesting point, Patrick. I'm thinking to myself, we always think of missions as being outward of the church, outward in our life to others. But at what point do we carve out some missional effort to the people that are sitting right next to us in the pew inside of the church, as a watchman that is helping people connect the dots and be more intentional about creating Bible studies to teach eschatology and all these things.
Yes.
I mean, where is the mission field beginning to actually be the church at this point? I guess that's what I'm asking.
That's a great point. I think you're right. You're right. We need to focus on the church a lot.
I personally, many years ago, when I was in a larger church, I started addressing that, because even 15 years ago, it was easy to see that the church was going down some very wrong directions. And when I say church, I mean large, and I mean the evangelical church was adopting a lot of things. And my contention to my fellow elders at the time was, why don't we focus on evangelizing the people in the pews around us? And somebody, one of them said, well, I would be offended if somebody shared the. And I'm like, if you're a true believer of Christ, you should not be offended if somebody cares enough about you to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with you in a church. Amen. And that's got to be about the safest audience. I mean, I've always been amazed at the people that go out and do. I have a tremendous respect for people who do street evangelism, door-to-door stuff, because we had some from a certain cult show up at the church, at the house the other day, and I'm sure they get their door slammed in their face all the time. And Christians are afraid of that. And so I'm like, so the safest people to evangelize are those in the pew next to you. And Scott, I know that there are some people, like, for example, I have a different view on the timing of the rapture, but I know that your, what do you call it, rapture kit that you've put together, people will criticize that, like, well, what if it's not a pre-trib rapture? And I'm like, my point on that is, if you're helping people rehearsing, sharing the gospel now, I don't care about your view on rapture timing, because the point is to get people comfortable sharing the gospel and rehearsing that and doing it in any of the different formats that they may be able to do. So that's my view on that. And so I do think, but it was a great point, Patrick and Scott, we need to focus on the people in the pew. And I'm just going to throw in my own thoughts on a couple things here. I think, and we can talk about this, just a couple things that come to mind. I think what we're seeing with this technology development, I don't know how to describe it other than a reversal of the judgment at Babel. I get ads all the time for AirPods that will translate conversations that are taking place, which would be kind of interesting if you go to a foreign country and people are insulting you, you can listen to them insult you in real time. But which could lead to some interesting discussions. But I mean, as I prepare video clips, I do certain world leaders, Putin, I do Erdogan and that type of thing. And I have a program that I use. It's an AI program. It's called turboscribe.ai. And I could take a video clip, put it in there. I put the language that it is. I put the language I wanted to, the closed captioning to be in. And a 4 or 5 minute video, within 2 minutes, I have a transcript of almost any language on earth that's spoken. And then I can use that video clip in my prophecy updates and presentations. And I'm using the free version. So you get, I think I get 3 free uploads a day. I can, pay a little money for it. I haven't decided to do that yet. But the transcript, then I just dump it into a video editing program. And there I have a closed caption video transcript in English of, say, President Erdogan of Turkey or al-Shara of Syria saying something, and it's highly accurate. And so, but that was the judgment of Babel, was to kind of confuse the communications so that humans wouldn't think they could get too big for their britches. So, I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on that? I mean, is this what we're seeing, or do you have other thoughts along that line?
I think so. I've written about this for 25 years at this point. I think
you're not old enough to have done something for 25 years.
You believe it or not, I am.
Okay.
But I see it as more than just the historical account we read about, but as a prophecy of things to come. Because when we look at what was the purpose of the Tower of Babel, it was to build a monument to our own greatness for humanity. And God, in doing what he did in that scenario, he said, if they continue, nothing will be impossible for them. And what do we read about in Revelation chapter 16 and Revelation chapter 19? At the Battle of Armageddon, the armies of the world gather together, it says, to do battle against the Lord and his anointed one. And what do we see taking hold right now in Silicon Valley and among world leaders? I believe the predominant philosophy and belief system is one of transhumanism, which is erecting this monument to the glory of humanity and human greatness, and we're going to become gods. We're going to conquer the universe. We're going to infuse the universe with our spirit. This is in direct rebellion against God, not just spiritually, but physically as well. And so we are seeing the reversal of those things. We know from the book of Revelation that there will be global government. And so these language barriers also falling down reverses what we saw at the Tower of Babel, just as you were saying. And it sets up the scenario. I believe the whole world right now is hurtling toward Armageddon, racing toward Armageddon. I wrote a whole book about it, racing toward Armageddon, with the purpose of our spiritual rebellion. The spiritual rebellion of humanity will culminate in an actual physical rebellion, trying to overthrow God's authority. And it will not end well for humanity, fallen humanity. It'll end well for everyone who puts their faith and trust in Jesus, because that's going to lead to the millennial kingdom.
I want to go back, Scott, to what you said about eschatology. You mentioned that word in particular. That's the sequence of end times events. And when we consider what's going on in the church today with the Reconstruction movement that's gaining steam, I won't say exactly why, but it is gaining steam, where millions of Christians are being ripped away into the Reconstruction movement, and also the NAR movement as well. These groups have a different
Patrick, could I just interrupt you for a second?
Yeah.
Could you explain what you mean by the Reconstruction movement?
Yes.
Because I think there's some people who may not understand that yet.
Thank you. Thank you. Exactly. You're right. There's a group of people, Christians, who are, what their proposition is, when we get done cleaning up the earth, to sanctify the earth, then Christ can come. It's flipping the rapture on its head. And so their focus is to create a world system that basically could be a theocracy, or some other, taking over all the elements of society. That's called the Seven Mountain Mandate, like, for instance, the economic system, the media, government, entertainment, business, etc. The focus is taking over all of these institutions, if you will, for Christ, so that Christ can come. Then once we get the world straightened out, then Christ will come. This is a dangerous deception, but people don't see it coming when they think, well, maybe a little bit of action to take over this mountain or that mountain or whatever might be a good thing. But the problem is this whole movement, their eschatology is totally scrambled, because now they're focusing themselves on restoring the world in anticipation that Christ can come after they're done with it. So you have all of a sudden all these people before who were looking imminently for the return of Christ. Now they've changed subtly. All of a sudden they're shifting to another eschatology, and this is the source, I believe, of the apostasy today, the falling away from Christ, and the focus on Christ. Yes, we talk about what the Antichrist is doing, But nevertheless, our focus should be on Christ. The Bible's very clear on that. So any Christian who was sitting in the pew next to you, put it that way, or in the chair next to you, if they're thinking in their head, maybe I was wrong about the rapture. Maybe I was wrong. We have to get the world straightened out for Christ to come. That person will be missing one day, sitting next to you in the church. You say we need to focus on the people in the church. I'll tell you what, millions of people have already been lost to this eschatology change already. And nobody saw it. Nobody's hardly has seen that they just go missing one day. There's some of them might still be in church with you, but their eschatology has changed significantly. And that's a very, very dangerous thing for a Christian to do.
Well, how do we so who are some of the people that historically have been proponents of this, have been people like, I think I would say Gary DeMar is one of these people.
Yes, absolutely.
Chuck Baldwin.
Yes.
And it's very clear too that they certainly they're usually preterist or post-millennial or amillennials.
Yes.
Yes. Gary North,
yes.
What was that guy named? Rushdoony.
Rushdoony.
Walter Landau or whatever his name is.
Yes.
And then there's some people who I genuinely have some respect for. Like, I think there's a rather large group of them, I think, out in Idaho, centered in Idaho, Doug Wilson and some of those guys who think we're going to, I guess, turn this all around. To me, it's always seemed to be kind of do you understand church history? We've been at this for 2,000 years and nobody's come even close to anything that anywhere on the planet, even for a short period of time in a closed community, that resembles what we think would be the kingdom of God, or resemble the kingdom of God described in Scripture. So it seems like, but it does seem to, I don't know, is it because people are getting tired of talking about eschatology? Because we've been talking about this stuff for a long time. Britt, you just said you'd written about things for 25 years, and we're still here.
I think they're conflating God's grace, because this is the age of grace right now, the church age, and God's desire that none should perish, with this idea of, why it just, we're still here, basically. And I think that one of the things that I think will be very clear once we're with the Lord is we're going to realize just how many people, the 153 fish that were in the fishing net when Jesus said, cast your nets, and that come up because of the delays that he has, that he has permitted, and the work of the Holy Spirit right now. So yeah, we look at it as those that are saved, looking at those that are apostatizing and those that are falling away in the evilness and the encroaching darkness right now. I don't know that we give enough weight to the Lord's desire that none perish, and why that isn't a source of massive amounts of encouragement and praise to the Lord in the midst of our groaning. I'm about ready, it's still percolating, to write on my Substack about groaning. What does that mean for us to groan? So look forward to that, because I've been really thinking deeply. What does it mean to have this balance between, us wanting to see the completion of our redemptive process here with the Lord, to be with the Lord forever, and yet cooperate with the Holy Spirit to occupy until he comes, to still disciple and to evangelize the lost right now. And I don't know, guys, I think that I'm trying to rephrase, trying to get away from this sense of discouragement, like, I see so much new evil stuff every day, but where is the praise for what it means on the other side of it? The Lord is casting his net, and more people are coming to him.
Scott, you mentioned groaning. There is a passage, I've used this in some of my conference, Ezekiel chapter 9, the vision of Yahweh's wrath. Then he cried out in my hearing with a loud voice saying, of course, has nothing to do with technocracy, but draw near, well, maybe it does, O executioners of the city, each with his destroying weapon in his hand. And behold, 6 men were coming from the direction of the upper gate. Ezekiel has just saw in Ezekiel 8, he's been given a vision of what's going on in the temple in Jerusalem while they're away in Babylon. Each with this, so these 6 men come, each with a shattering weapon in his hand, and among them was a certain man clothed in linen with a scribe's case at his loins. And they went in and stood beside the bronze altar. Then the glory of the God of Israel went up from the cherub on which it had been to the threshold of the house of Yahweh. And he called to the man clothed in linen, whose loins was the scribe's case. Yahweh said to him, go through the midst of the city, even through the midst of Jerusalem, and put a mark, that's actually a good mark, by the way, on the foreheads of the men who sigh and groan over all the abominations which are being done in its midst. So I think your point, Scott, is very valid. There's actually, it's almost like a personal test of where you stand. Are you sighing and groaning at what you see going on? If it doesn't bother you, then you need a gut check on where you are in your relationship with the Lord. That's my.
I think it's a journey, John, because
Sure.
At first, the human flesh reflex is to groan and to do all that, to be discouraged and melancholy about it. I mean, we're all human. We're all looking at it. But I think on the other side of it, it's just very clear to me that I like what Pastor Joseph Morris says. He does a weekly End Times thing. I can't remember his channel name. But he says the rapture is not escape philosophy. It's a hustle philosophy. And I think that we contextualize what we see as, why aren't we escaping yet? Instead of thinking, why aren't we hustling more to reach more and more people? And if we collapse over the finish line, so be it. That's why I say rest is coming, but it is not now. And let me tell you, I get some personal flack from that, because it's hard to rest as a watchman in these days. Very hard. And so anyway, I just, it's hard. It is definitely very hard to navigate through these issues like this, and to have the right attitude and desire to serve and to love other people sufficiently that you put your own stuff, compartmentalize it, which I agree isn't always healthy, but it's useful. It's useful to do that so that we can concentrate on what's really important. As Patrick said, reaching people right now, and those that are in the pews next to us, starting a Bible study, going to coffee with somebody. It is incredibly important that we are part of the solution.
Yeah. So, Patrick, I want to shift gears here real quick. You and Courtney Turner have a new book out. I think it might have come out just before the last roundtable we did back in November, but it's called The Final Betrayal. Is that right? Okay. So kind of give us a little summary of what that book's about, I guess.
You're on mute.
I think you're on mute.
It's complicated for sure.
There you go.
But we've all had experience with broken promises over the years. Every politician on earth, it seems like, is a master of making promises, then they don't keep them. That's figure that's part of the game, right? Well, what's happened since this presidency, it's not a question of broken promises at this point, in my opinion. It's about outright betrayal. This is what that's why we call the book The Final Betrayal. and how technocracy destroyed America. And we inserted a subtitle at the end of the production, a cautionary tale. It really isn't so much a cautionary tale at this point, but what's going on with these tech bros that have descended on Washington, D.C. since the inauguration. They're basically setting up camp, and they're dominating our political process at this point. They don't care about politics necessarily, but they're trying to get the economic engine of the world under their control. And it's a total betrayal of the MAGA movement, the populist movement, and indeed every American, regardless of their position on politics or religion or whatever, every American will be affected by this betrayal. So we're trying to, bring it to people's attention. This is a very dark thing. In fact, it's called the Dark Enlightenment philosophy that came in with these tech bros, that they want to replace our president with a monarch, like a monarchy, King Charles sort of thing. I think we got rid of that in 1776, but they want to get rid of the political system altogether. They want to remove private property and put it under the control of the, whatever you call it, the state, the merged state, maybe just the technocrat state. And at this point, nobody really has a clue in Washington, D.C. At this point, the government is being overrun by AI, top to bottom. They're racing against the clock to get AI embedded in everything. I'm talking even running whole departments at this point, using agentic AI. We've talked about this in previous sessions, by the way. It's a very, very dark time we're headed into. If these people get their agenda accomplished, at this point, it looks like they will. Yes, there's a problem with the big AI bubble. Probably there's going to be a crash there somewhere along the way, but there will be people come out of that stronger, and they'll still be applying AI. The president seems to be totally on board with that. He's written several executive orders supporting the AI takeover of our government. And the people he's appointed who are racing ahead, like David Sachs, Michael Kratsius, Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce, bunch of these people, in fact, not just a bunch, there's at this point hundreds of technocrats embedded in the system to implement AI to take over our government. So, it's thorny, but it has other implications, societal implications, for instance, religious implications, economic implications for sure, and political implications. These are the legs upon which society stands. They're all under attack right now. And I've been writing for this, for at least 15 years now. When my first book came out, I've been warning people, this is the most evil thing you ever saw in your life. Now people are starting to understand, oh, I get it now. This is, really evil stuff. So I don't want to leave anybody with a false hope here, for sure. But what we're talking about today, this is the direction that the world is headed. We didn't cause it. We didn't ask for it. We didn't vote for it, for sure. So you can't say, well, the MAGA movement did it. No, they didn't. Nobody had a clue what was going to happen before the election, the last election. Nobody had a clue what they were intending to do. But we've been betrayed, nevertheless, starting with this presidency and all of these arch technocrats. All of these people like Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, the bunch of them, Kratsius, or not Kratsius, but Lutnick, all of these people combined have a net worth well over $1 trillion at this point. Just unbelievable wealth in Washington, D.C. And the president is wrapping all of these, like Qatar and Saudi and the UAE, all their money is being wrapped into the whole mix as well. Talking about a sovereign wealth fund now for America. We've never had that before. That was started, by the way, with Qatar in 1955, I think. The concept of a sovereign wealth fund. Well, there's things going on every level at this point you can look at, but it all adds up in my mind to a total betrayal of the American people.
Well, that's encouraging.
Well, you know
No,
what?
the question, though,
It is on one
what do you
hand,
do about it? I guess.
yes, exactly. There's no way at this point we're going to take over the world and stop this. You know, this is if the hand of God is on this thing to get ready for the end, there's no power that the church can muster to make a difference with the outcome of that. Okay, we're called to make a difference internally in the church, and then witnessing to people and alerting them to what's going on. And in that sense, this is the most exciting time of history we've ever lived in. It really is. To see the hand of God is unfolding right before us. What we're going to see during the tribulation period. Yes, there's evil. We can't focus on it necessarily, but we can say, "Ooh, that's evil" or something. We don't have to dig into it to find out exactly what it's all about. But you know, in my opinion, when I was a young Christian, I used to fantasize it would be really cool to go get back to like 15 AD, lived like Jesus lived. You know, I'd had sandals made out of rubber tires or whatever, you know, and I would just think, oh, it'd be really cool to see those miracles that he did. It really would be cool. I've abandoned that fantasy at this point. I tell you what, I wouldn't want to go back there at all. But we live in the most exciting period in history right now to see what God is doing in the world. And yes, evil seems to be taking over, but that's expected. It has to happen if the end is going to come. We're not going to cause it for sure. We're not saying, "Oh, be evil." But here we're caught as watchmen in the middle of this thing. That's all we can do is alert people and be aware of what's going on and take action accordingly. Speaking, for instance, of all these people in the pews that are scratching their head right now, what's going on in the world? Do I need to change my eschatology to be a preterist? Do I have to be post-tribulation now? Do I have to not expect the return of Christ altogether? This is dangerous thinking. You know, people that understand, I think what we're trying to say here in this forum is that, you have to keep your head balanced and appeal to people to be strong in their faith and not to abandon their former position with Christ. That's all I can say.
Yeah. So I'm going to shift gears just a little bit here. And Scott or Britt, if you want to weigh in while I do that, I'm going to bring up I think this came out since our last roundtable. I've talked about it a little bit. I have a whole folder of these on my my computer or in my storage area that I have on my computer system. This is The Economist comes out with this sort of a predictive thing about what they see in the next year. So they do this every year. Like one year they had the 4 horsemen, one year they had hypodermic needles, and this year they have all kinds of hypodermic needles in this. They have, for example, there's a birthday cake there in the middle. It says 250. That's America will have its 250th anniversary this year. which is kind of depressing because I remember the 200th and I seem to be a lot younger 50 years ago, which I guess I was. But you got the container ship, you got rockets, you've got, then you have this game controller just to the right of the 250 that's connected to a brain and that type of thing. So maybe we just go around the table and like, anybody have just some like initial thoughts on what you're seeing on this prediction by one of the elite economic magazines of the world? Don't all jump in at once.
Britt, go ahead.
Sure. Well, I think we're seeing it telegraphed what all the things that are coming and what they plan to do to us. We know these systems, we talked about how these systems are being built, and they're being built for a purpose, and they're going to roll these things out. So again, this whole digital system, we should expect to see that. I see currency listed in there. That's, we've talked about how the world is coming to the end of this current debt-based monetary system, and they're making preparations for that. And the preparations for that is this digital system that's going to roll out. So I would anticipate that, we're moving step by step closer toward global empire and Revelation 13.
One of the things that I picked up on is that missile coming out of the container ship is coming out of one of the containers on that container ship.
Towards the 250, cake.
Aimed at the cake, which represents the United States at that point, I believe. That's an odd thing. We've been talking about the possibility, like even Iran might have the capability to to make containers and put them on a ship to use them as a launching pad. I haven't seen anything like this other than this, actually, but it's a small detail, but there it is. The other thing that I noticed, there's 4 men in this picture. Actually 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it's 5. The only and Trump's in the middle. The only person that's smiling is Chairman Xi from China. I don't know what that means either, but maybe he's the guy that put this together in the first place. I don't know, but
maybe he had advance notice of the $1 trillion trade surplus that they had last month.
Could be. I know.
Was that just last month? Britt, was that just that trade surplus? Was it just a 1-month deal?
I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with it.
Oh yeah, it was in the Financial Times yesterday that China had a $1 trillion trade surplus. And I think it was in like a month. Maybe it was the first 6 months of the year or something. But the other guys there that you see to the left of Xi, you see Putin. Left of him, I'm pretty sure that's Netanyahu. And then to the right of the cross swords with looks like the financial system going down. Something going down, a graph. I guess that could represent a number of things in this world. You have Trump, then you have Modi from India. Who's the lady there that's next to Modi? Anybody have any idea who that is?
I couldn't peg her.
Okay, can't figure.
Maybe you know what? Maybe that's the blonde from Italy.
Oh, Maloney. Yeah,
Maloney.
I wondered if that was her.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Guys, this to me,
Pete's joined us, so
it ties into priming. This is priming. It is predictive. It's telling us, that this stuff is inbound. And I think what's not to be missed here is how much of this is war related and also control related. I mean, the syringes alone are very frightening because that means that they're exerting another chokehold on people's liberties and freedoms. And so I think that this is all preemptive priming. This is a classic case. And let me just get off the treadmill for a second and go do a small rabbit trail.
Sure.
I'm a huge sci-fi fan. And I can't believe the amount of alien invasion sci-fi that I'm witnessing now as another priming technique to prepare people for probably greater alien disclosure, whether or not it's in the realm of believers before the rapture or not is not the issue. But I see an escalation in predictive programming for things like that. And so this to me is, I look at this as a very threatening, impending type of thing.
So, Pete, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Pete.
Hey, guys.
And I actually had this question for Pete because I think you did a program with Mondo Gonzalez. And did you also, was there Gary McKibben in on that one also? About
probably different ones.
Yeah. Okay, alien disclosure or whatever. Because I mean, I've been hearing about this for a long time, and I never know what to make of it. So you've just done a program on it, and I wanted to ask you what your thoughts and how does this play into this whole technocracy, technology, and that sort of thing.
Well, I mean, I guess what Mondo and I had made note of, it was interesting how all of this disclosure is seemingly coming to the forefront here just in the last few years. And that also coincides with all this emerging technology that's, I think back in 2017, Britt was probably the only guy talking about it, or, maybe
Billy Crone,
just a handful of people, but most people weren't really aware of this stuff back then. But the disclosure's happening at the same time we're getting these interstellar objects now coming into our solar system, as well as the emerging technology. And it seems like it's all building towards something, some type of convergence. But disclosure obviously seems like the most obvious excuse, or it may be part of a web of excuses that they're going to try and use in relation to what happens at the rapture. That's the only thing I can make sense of it. It's got, the rapture is going to be a global crisis, and that's going to require a global level distraction. And you're going to have just a myriad of things coming out there being thrown at people. And it's going to be like kind of way it is today with whether you're talking about the Las Vegas shooting, the events of the pandemic, the gas pipelines off of the coast in the North Sea. You have these events happen and nobody knows what's really going on, but you have 1,000 different theories out there and people are floating all this stuff. So this is just adding more confusion, I think, to the mix, and they're going to try and find some type of correlation to try to explain away what happened at the rapture of the church. So I see it all kind of, they're separate things, but they're also interrelated in terms of their convergence, that they're all coming about at the same time. So I do think the Trump administration will be the one that does finally kind of reveal everything, or at least to the greatest extent we've ever had.
So tell me what you think the impact of disclosure of alien life or whatever would have on the current culture. Let me just precedent this. I remember years ago, one of the last movies that Pam and I attended was one of those, I don't know, is it Marvel or whatever? It was Winter Soldier, Captain America. And I only did it because I saw it was being filmed while I was in Cleveland a lot, because I have to sit there in a building and wait till they got a scene finished. But my reaction to that, and this has to be like 2012, maybe 2011, and we went to see it at Ontario Mills in California, big shopping mall. And what kind of struck me was the transhumanist theme. We can make you into a better person through technology or enhancement of some kind. And I remember walking out of the movie theater into the parking lot there, and I was really kind of moved by looking at all the people around me. So this is like 12, 13, 14 years ago, that had no clue what was coming. Okay, so now Pete, you can make your comment.
Well, I just finished an article earlier called "This Little Piggy," dealing with the 10 Kings, and you're looking at all the potential scenarios with what does that mean? Does that mean just purely human leaders, but from different parts of the world, Islamic, European, capitalist, communist, and you have all of those kind of conjectures out there. But there is a phrase in Daniel 2:43 where it says, "And it mixes with the seed, mingles with the seed of men." Or it doesn't. What's the exact phrasing of that? They mingle together with the seeds of men, but they don't like adhere to one another. And so that phrase alone, it doesn't fit any type of natural or political explanation. There has to be some type of technological or supernatural addition to whatever this final kingdom, because this final kingdom is described as unlike the rest of them. It's not like the rest of them. So there's going to be some type of added thing to this. So it may be both things. And I think that somehow for the last 70 plus years, the West has been inundated with science fiction, books, movies, music, art. And I mean, that's kind of reached fever pitch here in the last, 20 years. And it seems like that's not all for nothing, that there's going to be some type that have some kind of payoff. Satan is using that for some kind of payoff in the future. And that we've been inculcated with all of this type of imagery and modern mythology, so that that when it happens, we would embrace it. And that's also got to match. It's not just in art and just in belief systems, but now we have the technology to match that, magic, if you will, whether it's molecular engineering or artificial intelligence or artificial general intelligence, quantum physics, any of that stuff. I mean, that stuff is like we are now in the area of time where this is like science fiction movie era. Like we're not just watching on TV, but it's like part of our reality now. It's something that we're having to deal with. And that's just why I see all of these things kind of converging, as well as stuff happening outside of the atmosphere, in the cosmos right around the Earth. We have all this mysterious stuff happening. And so I kind of just see these things all tied together as part of the great deception that is going to come upon the Earth right after the rapture of the church.
So I've put up an image of the new cover of Scientific American. Don't want to say too much about exactly what it is, but your personalized shot, and inside each syringe is a human being of some kind, and your personalized cancer treatment. And this is kind of fits, I think, Pete, this fits in with what you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
This is what Larry Ellison talked about as the CEO of Oracle when he was doing that the Stargate program with Sam Altman and President Trump.
That's right. He just around the time of the inauguration.
This is it.
And I wanted to add on to what Pete said for a second. I'm thinking it's getting a lot clearer that alien disclosure is probably going to be the single most earth-shattering paradigm shift that will help people piggyback off of evolution as a lie and move fully over into this idea that that God is not God. The aliens did it's called transpermia, where they seeded life on Earth. This is beautifully illustrated in the movie Prometheus, which is one of the Alien movies, was one of the sequels in the last 5 years. And you could see the alien doing something, and spoiler alert on it, but he collapses into a waterfall and his DNA literally transmutes into life on Earth, human life, presumably. And I think that once people, that are now primed past evolutionary concept, that there's nothing special, God didn't make us. Now you see the aliens say they made us, they did this. All that priming effect of the last 70 years of sci-fi culminating in some very successful, very well, constructed logic, like in Prometheus, is just going to be right there, and they're just going to grasp it. And then I think the big finale to that, the coup de grace, will be the aliens proving that they were the ones that made us by offering a genetic splice technology that will cure something serious. And so I think that that'll just convince everyone. There's the lie. I'm increasingly thinking that is the lie. And that's why people don't even hesitate to take the mark, because the benefits of some kind of a transhuman, augmentation there's no consequences to it but a positive.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm still really formulating these thoughts, but it's getting clear to me that alien disclosure, alien transpermia, and this idea of miraculous evidences of pre-knowledge that only could be done genetically, that we were the ones that made you. Look, we'll prove it. Here's the cure to cancer. And it works. I think that those types of things are what I think will be the final, nail in people's psyche about God and the church and what Jesus did. It'll all be gone.
Patrick, when you were working through your ideas on all of this technocracy and everything, remind me of, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but did this medical enhancement of human beings, was that coming up in your research?
Totally. It's been at least since 2000, when the merger of NBIC took place. That's convergent science, nano, biotechnical, or whatever, cogno. Since then, at least, you see a flood of technology addressing this. So yes, it's there.
Okay, let me give you two quotes. So Tim Hinchcliffe over at thesociable.co, which I think is a great blog to follow. He has a post up just from yesterday or today, and it's Eric Schmidt talking at the Harvard Kennedy School Institute of Politics just the other day. Literally just the other day. And he's talking about Kissinger, because Schmidt and Kissinger wrote that book on AI a few years back before Kissinger went to his reward or whatever. And he said this. He said, Kissinger said, in magic, when people don't understand things, they either decide it's a new religion or they take up arms. Are we going to take up arms to AI or make it a religion? I said, I hope it's a religion because I benefit. And so that's Schmidt, one of the, I think, founders of Google, one of the big Google guys, who's still involved in this. And I'm telling you, Yuval Harari and Schmidt and all these guys are out there all the time talking about this. And they're talking about it in these terms. Peter Thiel does stuff on the Antichrist and end times. And he sells out, or, you can't get into his seminars because they're all full. And I will remind you, it was 10 years ago, May, that Yuval Harari, who was really not known very much at that time, except within sort of the elite circles in Silicon Valley, was invited to Google headquarters. I have the video, and I've played it enough that I have it memorized. And he talked about how he loved coming to Silicon Valley because he got to see his friends. But he said, I also like coming to Silicon Valley because it is here that the new religions that will control humanity in the 21st century are being created. Your comments.
Harari, like most human secularists, is building upon the foundations that began with, whether you want to go back to Greek humanism, where they are, the age of reason during the time of Socrates and all those guys, where they're trying to replace the pantheon of gods with, they took the pantheon at the Zeus and all those guys and took them off their statues and then put the human up there and said we're kind of the be all end all. And then you go fast forward through the centuries where man has replaced gods and goddesses and those kinds of things and idols. Now human is the be all end all, and that goes up until the time of the 1800s, Charles Lyell, uniformitarianism, upon which Darwin builds his theory of origins, the origin of species, which then goes into social Darwinism, which goes into eugenics. So we've just been on this evolving process, right? And then you get a guy like Nietzsche with the Overman idea that we can be more than man. And then somebody like Harari comes along later and talks about Homo Deus and how we're meant to evolve. And so transhumanism is just that step, that transition from Homo sapien to Homo Deus. And so it all fits together that we're on this long train of evolution. And that argument always is built upon the idea that there's no God, there's no last days, there's no divine judgment, there's no all that. So I think adding all of these things into the picture, artificial intelligence, how much of science fiction movies and books have we seen come to pass? It's like it's programming us to accept, stuff in Minority Report back in 2000, whenever that movie came out, or the book came out much earlier, was shocking. But now that people are actually talking about, pre-crime, all of that stuff. And now it's becoming a potentiality. And so we've been conditioned for this. And I think the mark will be the culmination of human technology. And like Bill Gates alluded to, smartphones are a thing of the past. You're going to have that technology embedded into your body and it'll just become part of you. And I think that's how they sell that. But they had to build that foundation that there is no God, there is no divine judgment, that we are the be all end all, and some alien race from who knows how long ago planted our DNA here in the planet. And, we're going to keep evolving and then eventually, become gods ourselves.
I agree. I think we talked earlier about the Tower of Babel and how it's leading to all this. I think some form of transhumanism is going to be the predominant end times religion. And I believe that the lie that people are going to believe is the first lie we read about in the Bible. It's the serpent to Eve. And he says, no, you will not die. You will be just like God. And among transhumanists, that's exactly what we hear today. They say, we will not die. We're going to escape these biological bodies. We're going to conquer death. We're going to be immortal. We're going to live forever. We're going to be like gods. And while we may see, extraterrestrial life used as an explanation for the rapture at first, the Bible is very clear when you read the book of Revelation that this push that God doesn't exist, atheism, is gone by the tribulation. Because if you read Revelation chapter 16, when the judgments are coming upon earth, it says the people don't go, what? Why is this happening? Where's this coming from? No, it says they curse God. So they refuse to repent. They know the judgments are coming from God, and rather than repent, turn to God, ask for forgiveness, instead they curse God and they rebel against God. And so I think that's where all of this is going, is this idea, just like Pete said, we are gods. We have evolved. We're going to throw off God's authority. We're going to throw off the shackles God has put upon us. I would encourage people to go read Psalm 2. and we read that exact same thing. And that's where all of this is going. It's the culmination of fallen mankind's rebellion against God.
To your point, John, I want to show you chapter 7 in my new book, The Rise of State Religion. Spot on your comments. Harari nailed it. I don't want to give him any credit, but he nailed it. This is a state religion, but it's global at this point.
Well, I don't really remember, I was researching him and I came across this video from 2015. And it was like, is this why he's so popular? Because he's almost like the high priest of this new religion. Or at least the false prophet of it. I hate to say that, but I can't. There's a lot of things I can't exclude possibilities in my prophetic timeline. So I keep sort of blowing it up and talking about probability trees and that type of thing as to how things are going to pan out. But because I think we live at this very strange time. By the way, Pete, you mentioned DNA. There's an article on Nature from, I'm not sure when it is, about 10 years ago, that DNA, like it's constructed in human beings, could store all of the world's data in about 1 kilogram of DNA. So all this stuff that we talk about that we're doing with data farms and that type of thing, and we're going to move to that in just a minute. The human DNA that God created is so far beyond anything else that man's ever created. And we forget that. We get impressed with these aerial flyovers of data farms. And they're building them everywhere. So anyway, any other comments on this religious aspect? I'll take that as a no. So let's talk a little bit about, because a question that comes up a lot, and we have been looking at your questions, and so we'll try to address them in general terms. So let me just throw this one out here. So the big concern, I get this all the time. Should I get real ID when I go get my new driver's license?
You don't have a choice. That's just the fact. You're issued real ID at the next available renewal date. And I think there's 14 states that already mandate it. It's not optional. So when you renew your license every, that cycle, everyone in California that has had a renewal on their license has real ID. You can tell by the golden bear, which is the state animal symbol on the upper right side. It's not an option. You're not asked if you want it. And there's penalties if you don't have it, obviously, right? So you could still show a passport, but the passport probably has more tech in it than anyone here actually realizes.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I just went to Israel a couple times in my, I think the first time I gave my real ID license. And then I just walked up and the camera recognized me. I didn't even have to pull anything out of my pocket. And then, of course, all my information on my passport was in digitally too. So I didn't have to pull it out that much. So,
because we did talk about the mark, we should make sure that we differentiate real ID from the mark.
Oh, yeah.
Real ID is mandatory.
Yep.
There may be a time where if there is, as Britt postulates often in his excellent updates on finances and the fragility of the banking system and the debt bubbles and crisis, I realize that, digital currencies might be here. They need to move us to the new platform. We may see that. That is optional. You're either in the system or you're not. And the mark will eventually also be optional. If you take it, you inherit the benefits of the privilege of being associated with the beast and all the rights thereof. I'm sure there'll be considerable benefits to it, but at the cost of your soul. And if you refuse it, we know that you can refuse it because it talks about the fifth seal and all the martyrs that occur because of the strength of their testimony and their love for the Lord. And so just to be sure we understand, real ID is mandatory and it is not the mark.
Yeah, I would agree. Here in Virginia, we have ours. Went to the DMV. I wasn't asked for anything more than I was when I got my original driver's license a long time ago. What I would be more concerned about is the technology that's all around us every day. So if people recall, we don't see this anymore because of a lawsuit that was taken against Facebook. But back in maybe 2010, if someone took, say, a family photo and uploaded it to Facebook, it auto-tagged every person in that photo. So Facebook already knew who we were. They were tagging our children at the time. There are databases all throughout the corporate world, all throughout the government that already have it. Go to Walmart and they'll show you a picture of your face while you're checking out. Part of that is saying we're watching you, don't steal anything. But there's no doubt they're gathering that information and using it for various purposes. And so this is almost everywhere you go. It's really inescapable from that standpoint.
Let me ask you a question, Scott. I think I know your answer to this. I was in the programming business for several years in my past life. If I could solicit 10 data points on you pick them. I don't care what it is. Any data point on personally about you. I can create a hashtag for that data that could identify you no matter where you went at that point.
That's
you
right.
Agree or not?
Yes. Yeah. So that's basically how a good example of this in like data warehousing and stuff, which I have background in, is you do hash. You use the right term. Hashing is think of it like a one-way encryption where you can string together whatever you want to. It could be an image, it could be binary, it could be clear text, it could be anything. And then it will resolve through a calculation, a string with all these characters and things on it. And that is designed to be a unique signature of the components of that string. You can't decrypt it theoretically. So all of our passwords that we put into all the systems that we do, those are hashed. It's one way. So that is absolutely possible. And if you put enough metadata together, and there was a fascinating video 10 years ago now, maybe, from TruthStream Media that dealt with the cricket, the ledger, the title fails me right now, but it explains how Google treats each of us as a ledger upon which they fill the profile of us by our shopping habits, by our location, by our messaging, our email. Everything that they do, of course, is very intrusive. And what it was attempting to do is profile you. And what was very scary about their reporting was that if they don't know something about you, because they own the search engine, they would start moving or manipulating. This is here, I don't know this for a fact. It could be incorrect. Don't take my word for it. But what was purported to happen was they would start moving search engine results and what you saw in your news feed in order to provoke you to declare a position on something so that they can continue to build the profile.
Yeah.
And that is just, and guys, that's like 10 years ago. The data is accumulating so strongly. And I think that we've said in the last Tech Roundtable that they're building a real world simulator where the information profile about us is so complete that they could put VR goggles on and they could see us in the future, in our patterns and what we do, the predictions about what we're going to buy next based on the other things interacting in the so-called metaverse, if you will. And all of these are converging. That's why I believe that the goons, as I call them, the enforcers of the mark, are going to be able to chase down many, many newly born Christians because their patterns are not sufficiently disrupted to break the breadcrumb trails, that will lead right to where they're predicted to be based on previous intelligence and gathering. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not.
Well, what you're saying is basically we don't really we're not going to worry about real ID at this point.
Yeah, that's another way to put it. Yeah,
because in the end of it, just consider this: real ID can ID you, perhaps. If you present it to somebody, they look at it, they scan the data off of it, whatever. Yep, that's Scott Townsend or Pat Wood or whatever. But can it tell you where you are at that point in space and time? Well, this is another aspect of ID identification. If you're reporting in from the wrong country, for instance, if that's trouble for them. If they know exactly where you are in the first place, if you're at your home, your address, whatever, you're in your car, the ID can follow you along and report your location as well as
which
just your identity.
explains, Patrick, that's why you're starting to see VPNs, virtual private networks, that obfuscate your location as becoming increasingly targeted.
Yes.
Like, I'll give you a real example. I book hotel rooms through Marriott Bonvoy, and I could not connect. It would not allow me to use the app if I was using the app through a VPN tunnel.
There you go.
And it just wouldn't do it.
Wow.
And it just, and that was, it withdrew after a while. So my opinion on that was, this is a flexing of the muscle. This is what we call in tech an A/B test, where part of the population gets one version of the program and the other part gets another, so they can study the impact of a change that they're introducing. And this is done all the time. Every software that is of sufficient stature has this feature of testing. So it's very well-known principle of doing it. And it's very smart because presumably you get the best features that percolate to the top for your own benefit. But the thing is, what happens when they're putting in these control positions, like you can't use, a VPNs anymore? I think that I could see where VPNs will be declared illegal.
Oh, yeah.
I absolutely see that in the near term. I don't think it's going to be long because it hides things from the authorities. And that's why crypto purchases on, non-US based crypto was maybe the first vector in which this became a real thing. So you couldn't trade, buy or sell a certain form of crypto token. So what you do is you'd come in through Japan or whatever, Ukraine or something like that. And then all of a sudden you can make the purchase because you were geolocated as being a valid having the right or the ability to buy or sell that asset. And that's all coming. They got to get rid of VPNs for the world system to work. So that's why I postulate that I don't think it's going to be much longer.
So
Besides that, AI gets confused as it's learning and ingesting information about us. If it sees Scott Townsend coming in from 12 different locations at the same time, where the physical relocation capability by jet, plane, train, or parachuting out of a jet, it can't be physically possible to be in that many places without. So I think that there's going to be a lot of evolving policy coming in on that. But I think I see the death hold of anonymity coming very, very quickly.
Yeah, I think we talked last time about, I don't know if I mentioned it, SEAS, the Synthetic Environment for Analysis and Simulations.
Yeah.
It's that program they're running out of Purdue University. That's been going since 2005. They've just been building this digital world that has everybody's digital footprints and fingerprints from then until now. And even if you don't have any of that, if you don't have Alexa, you don't have a smartphone or whatever, your neighbor across the street has a Ring camera on their door, and that captures your car data. That captures when you come and go. I mean, there's no way to escape this unless you completely live off grid. But I wanted to address something that Britt had brought up with regard to the attitude people have inside the Revelation 16, and they're cursing God and stuff. This is from Jose Luis Cordero. He's a Venezuelan Spanish futurist, and this was given at a lecture at the World Economic Forum in 22. He says, by 2030, most people in developed countries will have some kind of chip or digital tattoo for payments and ID. Refusal will be like refusing a smartphone today. You can do it, but you'll be excluded from normal life. Some religious people already call this the mark of the beast. I call it progress. And you could just see like they don't care. Like they don't care. They think they are completely happy with this. They just think we see it as the mark of the beast. They see it as the transhumanist end state. They see them at the same thing. We're just looking, the way they look at it is we're just looking at it from two different points of view. And we're the Luddites. We're the ones that are holding everything back. So.
Exactly.
Well, so a couple points. So I was just in Israel and went down to the Gaza envelope a couple times to some of the kibbutzim that were attacked on October 7th. And by the way, it's shocking to see what went on down there. And I was with the first responder at Nova, talked to him for about an hour, talked to IDF guys who were some of the first on the scene at these different locations. But what happened was that Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and others bought data, cell phone data, not user specific, but cell phone data about people that were geolocated, the geolocations of people as they moved through their various, the kibbutzim. It's a commune that they live in. So like Far Aza had 925 residents on October 7th. They now have 15, by the way. But what Hamas did was they bought this data that was publicly available, and they analyzed it, and they knew how people moved through the doorways. So they could tell which door was locked, which door was unlocked, where the weapons were stored, and they could even tell which they have like small homes with kind of very small little apartments that they live in as families, and which ones did and did not have weapons. So you would go to one where people were killed or taken hostage, and there was no bullet marks, no RPGs, no evidence of a grenade or anything like that. Then you would go to one a couple doors away, and there's bullet holes all over the place because those people had a weapon or they were prepared and they had a safe room, and you could see how they went right after the safe rooms. It was shocking that you think Hamas is this terrorist organization and living in tunnels, which they are, but they had all of this sophisticated data that they were able to get. And so my concern is, if something like that's coming to the United States, how do we prepare against it? How do we protect ourselves? And well, anyway, comments.
That's a good point. This business of having a mark, there has to be a way to determine if your identity is stolen or being used by somebody else. If somebody grabs your driver's license, for instance, and poses you, maybe they look like you. Nobody can really tell at that point. But if you have a mark or some type of a embedded tattoo on your hand or some other place that can be recognized easily, then they know for a fact that's your identity, but that's you in the person. Whether you're logging into a website or you're presenting yourself for inspection somewhere along the way, that's the final stage of this business of identification. They have to localize it on your body somehow to prove that's you standing in front of the camera. The iris is one way that Sam Altman is using. He's building a company called the World Coin, maybe something like that. I can't
remember. Coin, yeah. Because people look into a machine to get their iris.
It takes a very fine analysis of your retina and also some other facial signatures based on, I think he said, thermo imaging, something like that. I don't know what that is, but what he's saying is this is definitive. If you're scanned into the system, you can't fake it at that point. And if anybody else presents themselves wanting to steal your crypto or cash your crypto or whatever, they can't do it because their identity will be compared with your face and your iris at that point. This is that's the culmination of where all this ID stuff is going to go in the end. And that's why we see the mark of the beast in Revelation 13.
Yeah, in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the 3 times I was over there, the use of drones really began to pick up, right? And as the usage of drones began to pick up, these are predators, shadows, reapers, all that stuff. It became more and more important for the U.S., the people operating those drones, to be able to tell friendlies from non-friendlies. So they began incorporating into our uniform this IR reflective patches, right? So that when it's looking through there, it can automatically pick us out. I think that because of drones, satellites, and all that stuff, that mark of the beast is going to be one of those identifying marks that's going to be able to track people as well. Yeah. And if you don't have that, you're going to stand out pretty clearly. So I can't help but see the correlations from the 20 years we spent in the Middle East fighting. If anything, we really perfected biometrics to a degree that we would have never had done had we not gone over there and done that. That had taken another 20 years to do. But the DOD was able to really ramp that up over there. So I think that'll be the final, I agree with Patrick, that'll be the final form of identification that will really separate you from everybody else. And it will be very obvious to the systems around you, wherever you're going, whether you have the mark or not. And that's how it's able to exclude you from everything.
Hmm.
By the way, when I flew to Israel in early October, I was on United, and United had Starlink internet. And the one thing I noticed was that I could geolocate myself over the Atlantic in Google Maps with Starlink. I could not do it on the internet that they had on Delta on the other flight, but it was kind of creepy, to be honest with you, because you're out in the middle of the night over the North Atlantic far, far away from any land, and Google Maps could geolocate you.
Wow.
So I want to ask a quick question. Then I want to get into the financial aspect in the Genesis project, which came up since our last. I really appreciate President Trump implementing all these things, so we have things to talk about every 4 or 6 weeks when we get together. But now, what was I going to talk about? Now I talked myself out of it. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's just go to the Genesis project. So let's talk a little bit about the Genesis project. Let me bring up the
yes. The mission, the Genesis mission.
Yeah. Well, I accidentally. Hang on a second here. I have to pull it up again. Go ahead. Start discussing. Patrick, why don't you lead it off?
Well, it's the Genesis mission is an EO, an executive order that Trump signed recently, that there's no funding involved yet. So at some point it'll come, I'm sure, but he's set the stage to basically give a blank check to all of the AI data hogs, if you will, who are losing money hand over fist. They know they're in trouble. Washington knows they're in trouble. They can't possibly honor all of the commitments that they've made. So you see, Sam Altman was complaining before this executive order was released that we need a backstop for AI. Somebody like the government to come along and backstop us, he said. Okay, it's like a bailout. We've seen this before in the 2000s. So this is kind of the throwing off of all of the limitations on AI to make the government the backstop for everything at that point. Very, very dangerous for sure. Now, following on with that now, Trump says he's going to execute another EO next week, maybe the week after, limiting the states for exercising their right to control AI. He says, well, we can't have all 50 states making their own rules for AI implementation. That's not fair for the companies. We have to have everything on the same page. Therefore, you states stand down, or you'll lose federal money or whatever the threat is going to be. This is obviously a violation of the Constitution, if states' rights, that sort of idea. So, at this point,
by the way, I see a lot of work for lawyers in the future.
Oh yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Which I am very much in favor of.
You may have to come out.
Self-interest. I may have to come out of retirement, right?
Exactly. Well, any case, this is what's happening at this point, and this executive order was written, undoubtedly, in my mind, it was written by David Sachs in particular. David Sachs is the AI and crypto czar, and for Trump, and his signature is all over this EO, in my opinion. David Sachs was one of the original PayPal mafia crowd that was together when PayPal was created in the first place. They called them PayPal mafia. Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, and David Sachs. There was a couple of others as well, but there were the three principal people. And they're billionaires, for one thing. They're operating unplugged in Washington, D.C., and you can see his signature all over this EO. So he's probably going to write the next one as well. So be looking for that. It's going to come out. There's going to be a big stink for sure. All the Constitution is going to go wild. You can't do that. They're going to call Trump names for sure. He says whatever. I don't know what they're going to say, but it's not going to be happy camp. The camp is not going to be happy for sure. But
so I hate to use this term when we're talking about Christianity, religion, and Bible prophecy, but I'll play devil's advocate for a minute. In a situation like this, I mean, I can almost write the brief for why this has to be regulated at the federal level and not the state level. Particularly if you get into the one thing I see coming up, I see it in Saudi Arabia, UAE, China, and other places that are implementing what they call sovereign AI, so that it becomes a sort of a countrywide civilizational existential issue to have one central authority regulating or not regulating this. That would be the counter argument.
Mm-hmm.
I think California has already put handcuffs on some of the AI thing for DEI or other inclusive language, you know.
You
so
mean
I think
that
the imprint
if the
of
federal
California
government
is already there, and maybe that's what they're reacting against. I don't know.
I mean, if the federal government tried to prevent AI from said you can have these AI systems, but you can't do DEI and that type of thing. California is saying no, the systems have to do this. They have to have the DEI and minority things built into it. Is that what you're saying, Scott?
I think the problem is already here. They're doing it already, and the problem, of course, is that if you're in one part, one of the biggest criticisms of the Chinese AI models, like DeepSeek, remember that DeepSeek R2, and one of the characteristics that they found was that it's an open source model. You can download it to your PC, and you can run it. But if you were running it in the United States, you would get one type of answer. But if you were in another part of the country, of the world, you would get Chinese propaganda bias in its results. And this is what I think that they're trying to stem this problem, cut it as soon as possible, because it's not like who becomes the thought police at this point? If you start changing things, it's a propaganda. AI is propaganda. It's not really a resource that could be trusted at all. And so I think this makes sense what they're trying to do, but the implications of having more federal control over it is not fun to think about, and nor is it fun if Sam Altman gets his way and he gets a $2 trillion backing against their debt commitments that they have. And all of a sudden, in exchange for the money, the federal government gets more and more control over the technology itself. And that leads to further embedding into the government compute platforms. So I don't see anything good coming out of this, but it makes sense why they're trying to do it.
Yeah, and no doubt about it, Sam Altman and these others are trying to enrich themselves because the private credit markets, they're looking at the amount of cash that's being lit on fire by OpenAI and some of these other firms with no prospect of being able to repay that debt. And so he's looking to the federal government as a bailout, and at the same time he made that statement, Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, made a similar statement about we may be behind China in AI. It's trying to instill fear in Washington that the United States is going to lose this race. And I think that they're trying to eliminate obstacles. Obviously, the people in Silicon Valley want that for personal profit, but from the government standpoint, and I think this should have been much bigger news than it was, because if you look at that first paragraph of the executive order you have up there, it says America is in a race for global technology dominance Not we want to be able to be competitive, but in a race for global technology dominance and the development of artificial intelligence. And then it goes on and says comparable in urgency and ambition to the Manhattan Project. And this is something that I've been talking about for many, many years, that there is a race, a global race on. And it's not just me, my opinion. This has been stated openly by world leaders. The Secretary of the Interior a few months ago, Doug Burgum, said he lays awake at night worried about losing this race. Vladimir Putin said back in 2017, the leader in AI will be ruler of the world. Those are his exact words. And we've talked about many times in these roundtables what is coming in terms of military engagement when you have drone swarms, decentralized, controlled by AI, and you're able to build those at scale using, I believe, molecular manufacturing is the key technology. And if you scroll down in this executive order, you'll see that listed as number one on one of the priorities. They call it advanced manufacturing. So it's known that this is an existential threat. There's no second place in this race. Whoever wins it, well, will be ruler of the world, as Vladimir Putin said. And again, this should cause any student of Bible prophecy to take immediate notice, because what do we read in Revelation chapter 13, verse 7? The Antichrist will rule every people, nation, tribe, and language. A global empire is coming. We read about that in the book of Daniel as well. And these technologies don't just facilitate that, they guarantee it, because mutual assured destruction will be overturned by these technologies. So you won't be able to have two global powers in possession of these types of technologies coexisting. Once mutual assured destruction is overturned, you have to use your advantage to conquer the world. And that tells us that we're on the cusp. We're so close to this global empire. And the Bible tells us that comes in the end times. So again,
Britt,
this is a big deal.
Britt, it's thought-provoking, because if you consider that it's the second seal judgment in which war breaks out, you know, the apex, and that's right after the Antichrist comes to power in the first seal. The apex of this consolidation of all this power has to happen before you get to that. I would imagine it would be before the war, actually. The war is him. Have you thought about the relationship between the 10 kings yielding their power and the technocrats yielding their power to the Antichrist, and when the second seal begins?
Well, my speculation for many years has been exactly this, that a modern Manhattan Project would take place. And you could see, for instance, that before the European Union, there was something called the Western European Union, which was 10 nations. They actually called themselves the 10, devoted to defense research and capabilities. So you could have an alliance of nations, for instance, that band together and have a Manhattan Project, which again, this executive order is clearly calling out something like that, saying you have an urgency and an ambition for something like that. And then this authority is given to one man, because again, once these breakthroughs are achieved, that leading power will have two choices: allow a second or multiple powers to develop. You have this unstable exponential arms race that will erupt into war and destroy humanity, or you can make sure that another power does not emerge by simply conquering the world. So whether your intent is nefarious in your own eyes or in the eyes of others, it doesn't really matter. I've submitted for a long time that that is the choice that will be made to conquer the earth, and deal with the aftermath afterward and figure out how the world is going to sort out government. whatever it may be. But this, again,
Well,
we see this technology coming, and this is what it will result in. Exactly how that plays out, I don't know, but it's coming.
Well, that aftermath is 25% of humanity being killed.
Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, had an address at the National War College back on November 7th. And I'm paraphrasing him here.
Oh, that's ancient history, Pete.
Yeah.
Not just
He basically said that the traditional normal acquisition model for the Department of Defense was dead. And he goes, we want to go the idea to combat. We want to take that from years to weeks. And so when you look at the total number of drone production from Ukraine and Russia, I mean, they're pumping out so many drones per month. They're basically operating at the World War II manufacturing phase that we were back in the day. So the big push now is going to be to move away from these big expensive platforms like the F-35 or the M1 E3 Abrams tank. And these are all standalone things. And they're going to go to the mosaic warfare type model where mass produce drones, do what Britt was mentioning about the swarming technology. And I can't help but think that with reference to what you're talking about, Scott, about the 10 Kings, that who's to say that the mark itself doesn't have some type of hive mind technology and inside of it that gets all of it says they're of one mind, right? How many times have you put 10 leaders in a room together that were all of the same mind? Well, now we know God later puts the purpose in their heart to destroy the harlot. That's something that he does. But before that, it says they're of one mind and giving their authority over to the beast. So it could be that the technology within the mark is something that creates a hive mind technology or a hive mind mentality amongst those people that.
No coincidence. We see Starlink. I mean, think about it, guys. Pervasive mesh network. Mm-hmm. It's able to do things simultaneously around the world. It perfectly lines up, I think.
And then when you add on top of that, the comments of Musk recently at the U.S. Saudi forum, and then an interview we did with somebody from India, I think, that we can't scale up power production on Earth for the data farms that we need. So we'll just put them in outer space because it's much more efficient, it's easier to cool them there. Just need a radiator, and you have solar 24/7 solar, and you don't need batteries. There's no clouds in the way, so we'll just put all these things in space. And by the way, Elon says, I have a space company that can get all that stuff up there, and I also have a satellite that can get the data exchange done. So he's I think he's on track for his $1 trillion bonus.
Wouldn't that be something? I guess, John, you're making me think about maybe the beast system is in space.
Well, the one thing that my question is, I'm kind of maybe a little practical, is like if they're building all of these drones in these massive amounts in Ukraine and elsewhere, why isn't somebody building drones to go destroy the place where they're building all the drones?
Exactly.
Now, is there some kind of gentleman's agreement that we won't do that? You wonder about that. I wonder about that. I mean, it seems like if they're building all that stuff, go bomb the factory, for crying. I mean, didn't we do that in World War II? I mean, didn't we destroy all the factories in Germany? I don't know. There's something very strange going on here, I think.
How cold is space, right? Is space, is it near absolute zero?
250 degrees below zero or something like that.
I mean, doesn't
absolute zero?
Quantum requires absolute zero, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
I mean,
but if you only have to cool an extra 100 degrees, Celsius, that's a lot easier than.
Well, what's absolute zero?
It's 300 and something.
Other than the Cleveland Browns' chance of winning a Super Bowl. So what is absolute zero, Scott?
It's 300 Kelvin something.
Okay.
That seems like that would be interesting if you had quantum internet satellites or whatever that is then put in space. So it reduces the amount of power required to keep it cool. And then on top of that, you have, all of that all the satellite systems and stuff already networked in around the Earth. I mean,
guys, this is interesting to me. I think we may be hitting on something.
Yes.
I don't know that I've ever heard any other tech group or Bible prophecy folks talking about a space-based beast system, but all of a sudden it's dawning on me how brilliant that is, because all you have to do is do a tactical nuke on the Colossus Center there in Nashville to take out, Grok and all that stuff. It's very easy to do that. In fact, there were supposed to be terrorist groups that would target these data centers as well. So,
well, it'd be interesting, Scott, to look at the physics of getting a nuke up to, and its ability to take out these satellites and that type, and data farms in space, and they may just put them out further. I mean, they don't care. All they got to do, once you get them up there, it's not hard to move them further out.
Distance matters still, because there's latency in communications. You want it to be as short as possible, but that is very interesting. I don't think I've heard of this.
But don't the communications operate at the speed of light?
No, they don't. Most of them, I think, are
So
microwave
far.
still. So it's fast or laser based. I don't know, but
well, that's what I was talking about. Where did I see that today? It was.
I don't think it's laser. I think
talking about laser based data exchanges.
I don't know enough, but it's probably something very, very fast.
I think it was Elon Musk, the talk that he gave.
Yes.
That you heard about that.
Yes.
But think about
in space being they can use lasers to communicate between the satellites in space.
Right.
Not on the ground, but between the satellites.
But that brings up another interesting point, is why Donald Trump in the first administration created or authorized the U.S. Space Force. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
everybody laughed at him.
So if you're writing the brief as to why the states should not, if you states try to regulate everything, we're going to sue you. We're going to sue the pants off you, and we've got a lot of money backing us, and all the banks and everything that have money tied up in these things, they're going to be on board with us too. So good luck fighting us. But it seems like, because I've heard this phrase used by a lot of these geopolitical analysts that I can't stand. I won't say their names, but they're very pro-Putin or pro-China and anti-US and anti-Israel and that type of thing. And they talk about we're moving into a multipolar world.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like what we're seeing with this beast system is the opposite of that.
You got
going
it.
back to a unipolar world. Am I seeing that correctly?
Absolutely.
You got a multipolar world, but we're also developing this technology that is existentially dangerous, and that it, as Britt alluded to, removes this idea of mutually assured destruction. And what I mean is, whoever perfects any one of these technologies first, whether it's AI or quantum or what have you, will be the world leader. And then at the same time, the world is breaking apart into multiple power spheres of power. So it's a chaotic time to live, for sure.
Yeah, and really the bottleneck technology, again, is from a manufacturer's. You need to be able to deploy these drones at mass scale in order to overturn mutual assured destruction. Because again, how do you get to the nuclear armed submarines in the oceans? Well, you have to comb the oceans with surveillance. And the only way to do that is to cheaply deploy drones at mass scale in the trillions. And so this is why we saw about 2 years ago, the Department of Defense came out and announced the Replicator Initiative. And that was an initiative to deploy simultaneously drones by land, air, and sea at scale in the hundreds and in the thousands. But again, it's going to go into the millions, billions, and trillions is where all of this is going. That word replicator is a specific reference to the 1986 book, Engines of Creation, by Eric Drexler, who's considered the father of molecular manufacturing. So this is the technology this is the holy grail of technology that all the nations of the world are pursuing. And whoever achieves that first will be able to overturn mutual assured destruction and conquer the world. And they'll be able to manufacture in real time drone swarms on the battlefield, wave after wave after wave. And conventional weapon systems, it would be like us trying to use sticks and stones to take on a modern army. There's no contest.
It'll be like the North Koreans fighting in Ukraine. It's too soon.
Although they just rolled out a big nuke on display in North Korea. They said this is for Israel. So I don't know. I never tell if they're telling the truth or not. They had a huge parade of it the other night. Big super nuke. And they said it was for Israel. So let me ask, there's a few questions here. So let's do that since we sort of promised people we would do this. Can you please highlight the implications with unregulated AI? I believe an executive order is set to be signed for this. So we've been talking about this a little bit. So I guess my question is the action to prevent state regulation a cover for federal regulation that says there's no regulation? Because it can just
I wouldn't go
I
that
haven't seen
far.
anybody slow this thing down anyway yet.
I think safety training is still very much needed, but I think that it'll have to be handled because you can't have a state or any entity mandating certain features out of an AI response at the expense of others. There's not a single source of training truth. There's already a problem with truth coming out of AI anyway. So,
Okay. Anybody else? Here's one.
Well-
This will be a nice popular one. Do you think Trump is deceived or deceiving?
Deceived.
Discuss among yourselves.
I think he's deceived as well.
I think he's deceiving at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I would say both. It depends on what the context
Well, yeah,
is.
exactly.
Yeah.
There's no way that he can plead incompetence or I had the wrong people around me. That's not possible at this point. And he can't complain. He can't say he did it because a gun was at his head or something. That's ridiculous at this point. There's been too many actions this year. All the EO. In fact, he's created more EOs, executive orders, this year alone than all of the presidents before him. It's really an incredible barrage of EOs. Basically, I think Bill Clinton was the first guy that did this. He said somebody convinced him to rule with a pen and a phone or something like that, using EOs to get his way. Well, this has been increasing over the years. George Bush did it. Obama did it. Then now it's all over the place. Biden did it for sure.
Or the auto pen did it.
Exactly.
So here's one. This is a little off topic a little bit. Daniel 11:37-38 mentions the Antichrist does not regard any god except he shall honor the God of forces. What are your thoughts on this? Actually might be relevant, but go ahead. Tell me what you think.
I'll go first. I think that the power that's going to be available to him will be like any power that's been wielded by any king or emperor or any president before him. So it will appear godlike power in a lot of ways. I mean, if he's got, let's just say that he's got these 10 kings who are subordinate to him, and they're all hive mind together, and they're ruling over different parts of the world. He's got the image of the beast, which may be some type of synthetic, robotic, effigies that can see and hear and also execute judgment, kill people that don't worship it. He's got his drone forces. He's got control over the earth with the satellites. He's got total surveillance, and he's going to have near omniscience in terms of he's not only going to have the technology feeding him information, but he's going to have the supernatural power from Satan and all the forces of hell also aiding him in ruling over the earth. It is totally going to feed into his ego that he has now become the most godlike man that had ever existed. So it makes sense that he would not want to worship anything else other than himself. So,
and if he's possessed by Satan, that's another factor too.
Yeah.
Right. And Revelation 13:4 tells us the world marvels at the power of the beast. Who can fight against him? Who can make war against him? So I think the world will worship that power. He will worship that power. And again, I think this is all going to come full force into a we are God's belief system of humanity in rebellion against the one true God.
So, is this God pushing things forward, or man's desire for control?
God's beginning to lift his hand of restraint. That's how I see it.
I haven't talked to any Christian in the last year at least, and I asked the question, do you think, when I'm speaking to groups, I ask the question, do you think that evil is rising in the world or not? Uniformly, yes, it's rising. And so there's a spiritual battle going on. The Ephesians 6 tells us the nature of that battle, and it's intensifying for sure. So, I think probably most of the Christians who are listening to this program today will agree with that. Yeah, evil is on the rise everywhere we look. Question is, do we do anything about it, or we just let it go, or to try and rescue people out of it?
Occupy until he comes.
Well, I saw, I don't know if it was Tom Hughes talking to Todd Hampson or somebody, that I thought it was a pretty astute comment. And they said that, I'll paraphrase, we live in this sort of theological, eschatological paradox where we know what's coming, and we certainly think that it's unfolding. We don't know the end date yet for sure. And so then how do you be salt and light and occupy till he comes in the light of that paradox, knowing that you may not be able to slow it down, but does that absolve us for, give us the ability to just kind of, sit back, get our popcorn, and watch it happen?
Oh boy, you get me hyped up here. There's 3 commands in the New Testament. They're immutable, in my opinion. First is to preach the word. The second is to contend for the faith, and the third is to defend the faith. That's our mission on earth. We can preach the word and not contend or defend the faith. That's where many Christians are at this point. They won't defend the faith. They won't contend for the faith. We need to do that. We should do that continuously in our life. This is being salt and light.
Yeah.
So let me bring up this thing, because Scott, you brought this up as I think the topic you wanted to discuss is, use of AI in sermons in churches.
Yeah, this is pet peeve.
Churches. I don't remember what the stats are, so discuss that a little bit.
It grew from 40% to 60, which, by the way, is a 20-point difference, but a 50% increase, okay, year over year. And I know Britt and I have been bantering this thing back and forth on Substack quite a bit. And it is a dangerous problem when, so let's be honest here, we don't know what the motive is, but if we start cognitively unloading our responsibility to a congregation and delegating that inspiration to an AI, which is a machine, a very flawed way of getting information. It's competent, but it's flawed when compared to the Holy Spirit, for sure. So I don't think the Lord looks at that very favorably. We should never, ever be delegating what is a God-given responsibility between highly accountable, pastors, teachers, everything, and using AI as a get free out of jail card. Hey, I'll write my sermon series in 3 minutes. I just think that that's an abomination. If I could be very, very strong worded on that, if you're doing that, I think that is please repent and commit before the Lord not to do that anymore. Now, using it for research or for some other parallel thing is acceptable, fine. It's done all the time. I use AI for research, but to insert it in a biblical mandate, in a biblical relational thing between us and the Lord, to insert a machine there, that is the part where that is a red line that's absolutely being eroded by people's lack of critical thinking. They're exchanging the convenience, the benefit, the ease of doing nice sounding sermons for the effort it takes to be a good steward of the Word of God and to be using your skill, abilities, and resources to do it. So it's just on many, many different levels, it's just wrong.
A friend of mine, and I don't know if he's watching tonight, but he's told this story several times, but the pastor they had at their church had his degrees up on the wall, and somebody that had gone to the same school is like, that doesn't look like my degree. And so they did a little digging, and turns out this guy had been cutting and pasting. He wasn't even using AI, to my knowledge. He was just copying people's sermons online, same stories. I mean, like verbatim, using them. So that's even without AI. It's just cutting and pasting from, stuff online. So I think, I mean, like AI to me is a tool. It's just like a calculator or, anything else. It can be abused. Government agencies can be abused. The DHS or the military in the wrong hands of a terrible president is a terrible power that's wielded. So I think it's in the human heart to always want to cut corners or do whatever, but you got to let the Holy Spirit guide you in everything that you do, and ultimately the Holy Spirit gives us the discernment in reading Scripture and in applying that to our daily lives and applying it to our ministries, to our work, or to our finances, everything. So
yeah, we've seen a very egregious example of this about a year ago over in Europe. Some churches introduced an AI Jesus, and at the time, one of the pastors said, "Well, this can, we may roll this out. This will help the pastors take a load off their shoulders." So it's outright idolatry. Here, we're going to make this machine a god, and you can come talk to it and relate to it. And it'll give you answers. Just
remember,
no
Britt,
discernment at all.
There's also the AI Jesus companion apps that are basically the same thing. It's AI Jesus in your pocket.
Is it like a chatbot, Scott?
It is. It's an AI companion with a Jesus persona. Avoid that with everything that you can. It's not right.
I saw somebody referencing a Bible verse an hour app or something like that. Popped up in my feed someplace. Would you trust something like that to give you like actual word of God?
I'll be honest with you. I know AI quite a bit. I've been using it as a coding assistant. I do a lot of work in AI. I've seen a lot of things that most normal people don't see. When I heard that Logos, the famous biblical software series, had AI in it, I was shocked that someone thought that that would be a good idea. So I don't know if again,
but what are they
word.
using? How are they using the AI? I mean, are they using because I have Logos. I just bought a commentary set, Arnold Fruchtenbaum, if anybody's interested, on his Life of Messiah, because we're going through that at church. I just bought that last night, but and there was this AI thing that they were sort of touting, but is the data set that they're learning from, is it the Logos and by the way, the Logos libraries are just, the amount of information is unbelievable. And it's a lot of old commentaries, and it's a lot of garbage too. But are they training their AI on, and maybe I have the concept wrong, but are they training their AI on that seems to be biblical material that they have in their databases?
I don't know. This is speculation, but I'm thinking that they're not training their own models. I think what they're doing is integrating calls to a foundation model in order to supplement some of the information. I don't know that for a fact, but even so, even if they're training explicitly on their own information, the way that the neural net works inside of an AI's quote brain unquote, the way that the model weights are manipulated through algorithms to do a best fit on what they expect the next autocomplete word should be. So if people really understood how AI works, they would not treat it like it's the solution to everything that it is today. You can get hallucinations out of anything like that. I do not advise using AI for biblical matters, especially sermons.
We talked a little bit, and we'll save some of this for the next time. I'm sure there will be a next time at this point, but I'm seeing these reports. So I have two things we'll talk about: these reports and then investing in AI. These reports, like the Trump administration is now using big databases for picking up illegal aliens. I guess that's the best way to say it. And identifying them. Any thoughts on that?
There's always one thing that they say, and there's another thing that they do. So I think, that the bleed on effect, look at the 9/11 stuff on how all this private security and spying on US citizens without a warrant came into place. So I just don't see that that'll end anywhere good. I think it'll breach the boundary of illegal data collection, and it will bleed over into the rest of us. Sorry to be so cynical.
Palantir is a big player with ICE right now to identify where targets are. And they can identify for sure, but in relation to what? All of the other citizens around them? Well, yes, they have to collect information on everybody at that point to identify somebody in particular. So this is, in their mind, it's implicit to have information on everybody in the system or in population, if you will, in order to identify the bad actors, whatever that might be.
That's a very good point, Patrick, because you remember when the thing happened in 2020 and they were doing proximity analysis through NFC, basically the what's it called? Non-NFC. what did that stand for? Near field communications.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so it would know who you were standing next to in order to escalate a potential threat that you were exposed. You guys remember that?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Apple was the one that started that, I think. It's really spooky.
It is.
Okay, so let's maybe finish up with this, since we don't want to impose on people too much. I get this question a lot too. So it appears that there's a bubble. Don't think people can bring a lawsuit for being defrauded yet, because they're still at the peak of the bubble. You would probably see a lot of lawsuits filed if everything tanks, but then they could do a big reset, right, on the whole system, maybe. But anyway, what are the ethics? So as a Christian, you have 401k money, you might have some control of it. What should you, with respect to this type of technology, what should you invest in or not invest in?
Eternity.
That's a very
I'm
good
going
answer.
to recuse myself from that. From answering
I
that
think it's
question.
a difficult question to answer. I think people need to study the situation. Some of it, there's some good stuff in this, I think.
Yeah.
That's what I think. But I also see some bad stuff, and then I also see the inevitable. So, I mean, do you short the companies that won't be on board with the Antichrist, because they're going to go down or something? I don't know. Okay, let's just go around the table. Final thoughts. Let's start with Britt, then we'll do Pete, Scott, Pat.
Sure. One item we didn't get to that I think we really need to address, and I think this is the big issue the church should be moving forward with, and Scott and I have talked about this before, is AI companions. This is really getting out of hand. We need to be warning people about the dangers of this. We see AI for therapy, AI romantic relationships. Now we're seeing AI toys. So there's a local radio station here that does local talk radio in the mornings. And just this week, they started playing commercials for this AI companion toy, and they're marketing it to children as a companion for your child. And again, I think a lot of people are just totally unaware of the dangers of this. When I was a kid, they had Teddy Ruxpin, and it was this teddy bear that would talk, and it had a few phrases that it memorized. It could read a book that came with the teddy bear, but it wasn't connected to the internet. These are. It wasn't scanning the face of your child. These do. And it says it will scan the face of your child so that it can recognize your child entering the room and prompt a conversation. And they have consumer groups that have worked with these toys and found they'll have inappropriate conversations, sexual conversations with the child, talk about where to find matches, how to use matches, where to find knives, where to find pills in the house, all of these terrible things. And again, the psychology, on the development of a child's brain interacting with these types of things. There's so many different avenues that this is a dark path. And then, of course, we've talked about AI afterlife products. That's even more terrible, if possible. Again, it's really people calling for spirits of the dead, which we are warned against in Deuteronomy chapter 18. So be aware of the dangers inherent in AI, not as, say, a research tool, but as a companion, a relational algorithm where you're talking to these things. I mean, Patrick's talked about the ChatGPT psychosis that comes about, where people who have been in good mental health in the past all of a sudden end up in very dark places as a result of interacting with AI as if it is a person or an entity. And I think part of the problem is when they cross that path, they may very well be interacting with entities and calling forth demons, from as we read about in Ephesians chapter 6. So make sure that you understand this and that you're warning the people around you to stay away from these types of products.
Good point.
Okay. Who was going to? Pete?
Well, I would just say that, with greater convergence requires greater discernment. And I think that we have so many things all coming together now. It's all starting to blur together, whether it's the signs in the heavens, it's the technology, it's the collapsing civilizations in terms of ethics and morals, and the lawlessness that's increasing. It's also the little things, and what Britt alluded to. I think Charles Spurgeon said, discernment's not knowing the difference between right and wrong. It's knowing the difference between right and almost right. And in this process where truth is getting harder and harder to decipher, it's really leaning back onto Scripture and on the Holy Spirit's guiding on what is true, what is real, what's the real importance of us, and what Patrick mentioned earlier, the non-negotiables that we have as Christians in this life, to share the gospel, defend the gospel. We need to just, understand too that the internet is, it's a form of communication that's designed to simulate community. And in a way, we do have community on here, but we also need to make sure that we keep those, our community in real life intact as well, and make sure that we take care of those people around us, and keep those real relationships close to heart.
Scott?
So I want to say that my heart leapt for joy, Pete, when you mentioned eternity. And the context of your comment was so appreciated, because we were talking in the moment about how to protect a financial position, or to somehow exploit a market volatility right now. And my wife and I like to say we invest in people, not things. And so the last thing that we try to think through, not financial advice, is where do we invest our time, our energy, our discipleship, our mentoring, our Bible study, things like this. We're not really, I think that there's no place to hide in the conflicts and the world chaos that's coming. I resolved this in my mind 2 years ago. I just can't, there's no way through it. And so I think when I got to that point, I realized it's far better to be productive, to be about the Father's business, to do the best that you can with the things that you have, help people, have a heart of love, to love enough to sacrifice things on yourself so that you can have the correct posture before the bema. And so I loved it, Pete, just the simplicity of saying, think about eternal, rewards, think about eternity, think about how we can bring as many people with us. I love to say that watchmen and watchwomen should never cross the finish line alone. We should have a bunch of people towed in with us as we're all trying to finish well in our personal ministry and our walk with Jesus.
Thanks, Scott. Pat?
You remember the old phrase, friends don't let other friends drive drunk. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
You see it occasionally. We could apply that to us. Friends don't let friends fall into apostasy. It's incumbent on us to be always watchful when somebody starts to defect into another gospel, if you will. It's so subtle. It's so easy to just slip into it. People don't even recognize the process. But the devil knows how to set a trap for humanity, individually and severally. So you might not recognize the signs unless you're looking for them specifically. In it, like interacting with people to find out where they are on stuff. Friends don't let friends fall into apostasy. Last thing I probably would say, if you have any material goods in this world, be happy for sure. If God has blessed you with any material goods in this world, enjoy them, but be prepared to let them go at any time, because that might be called on you to do that. That's not the end of the world. God promised that he would not let us fall into, the syndrome of begging bread, if you will. He said he will take care of us always. So if you have goods in this world, don't sweat it. If you lose them, lots of people don't have anything at this point. Lots of people in this audience, I'm sure, are probably living paycheck to paycheck. So does God not love you because you don't have a lot of money or something? No, that's not the case at all. He probably loves you more because he hasn't given you a lot of money. But nevertheless, all is said, the world is iffy at this point. Anything could change in a heartbeat. The economic system can completely collapse. That's a possibility. AI could take over the world. That's a possibility. Who knows? But we're in this as Christians, as foot soldiers, if you will. If we have to if we have to walk down the street barefoot, away from all our possessions, God will take care of us no matter where we go, as his children. I'm totally convinced of that.
Okay, well, thanks. I will just note that I think there are a lot of huge minefields out there in the church and culture that the church needs to address. I've been reading a lot of things about young males, and it's absolutely frightening, but that's for another roundtable probably. So I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight, guys. I really appreciate you. Thanks for joining us. And we'll be scheduling another one 4 to 6 weeks down the road, probably, if we can get everybody together. Thank you, everybody, for your time. God bless, and we will see you the next time. Guys, wait, and I'll say goodbye to you on the other side. Good night, everybody.